where does Drake stand in hip-hop history?
I would say he's the greatest of all times. The relevancy that he keeps showing year after year, hit after hit, record after record. Any record that he has put out has seemed to go multiple platinum. Like, that's never has happened before.
Yo, let's break down what really went down with Kendrick Lamar, Clipse, in that heavy verse that got the whole industry shook. Cause this ain't just another feature. This was war. A lyrical grenade so dangerous it had the label execs ducking for cover and making phone calls to shut it down. We talking about Kendrick's verse on Clipse's comeback track, Chains and Whips, the one Def Jam and UMG allegedly tried to block from the public. Not because it was weak, but because it was too real, too raw, too risky. See, Clipse was cooking up something special. After years of separation, Pusha T and Malice reunite to bring back that grimy, luxury, soul-scorched sound they helped build. But they didn't just want a hot track, they wanted to shake the room. So what they do, they reached out to Kendrick Lamar, the man who already body-bagged Drake, Cole, and half the rap game with Like That. And Kendrick ain't waste no time. He pulled up with a verse so fierce, so layered, so spiritually aggressive, they called it $1 million verse. No cap. Word is the clearance alone on Kendrick's bars cost so much that Clipse had to rethink their whole rollout. But it wasn't just about money, it was about message. Kendrick came through swinging. He touched on everything from betrayal to biblical warfare, from hip-hop's decay to West Coast authority. He didn't name names, but he made it crystal clear who he was talking about. And them folks at Def Jam, they ain't want that smoke attached to their logo. Rumors say UMG told Clipse straight up, you can't release this unless you cut Kendrick's part. And Pusha, he said, bet, then we out. That's when things got crazy. Clipse cut ties with Def Jam, left behind a deal that most artists would never walk away from. Why? Because they wasn't about to censor art to protect industry egos. Word is, they linked up with Jay-Z and Roc Nation right after. Jay gave them distribution, full freedom, and most important, no red tape. That's how much power this verse had. It forced Clipse to switch labels mid-rollout, all so they could keep Kendrick's pen untouched. Now let's talk about that verse. Kendrick didn't hold back. He opened with a shot to the culture, calling rap a rotting temple, saying too many of our so-called legends got betrayal in their veins. He spit, I ain't Judas, I'm Joshua, marching 7 times with angels around the industry's walls. That ain't just bars. That's scripture flipped into warfare. He's saying he ain't the backstabber. He the chosen one tearing this whole machine down. Who's the Judas? That line alone got people looking at Drake, Snoop, even Cole, wondering who Kendrick talking about this time. Then he goes deeper, dropping a line about kings who sip wine with cowards, then run sermons for the crowd. You already know Kendrick been on that spiritual tip for years, but now it feel like he fully leaned into prophet mode. He not playing the fame game anymore. He calling out the hypocrisy in the rap world, the media, the execs, and even the fan base that praise the fake and ignore the message. This verse wasn't for clout, it was for consecration. And the part that really shook the table, Kendrick said, they tried to blackball me from the playlist, so I baptized the booth with straight hits. He airing out the fact that folks in power, allegedly even UMG, been trying to silence him. Not because he fallen off, but because he too loud, too sharp, too independent. And the moment this verse was recorded, it was like everyone knew it'd be a problem, not just for one artist, but for the whole structure. But Pusha wasn't folding. He said this verse was the spine of the record, the spiritual weapon that brought the whole Clipse comeback together. Without it, the album felt incomplete. So instead of censoring Kendrick, they took the risk. And in doing that, Clipse not only gave Kendrick a platform, they made him the centerpiece of their resurrection. And that move, that was bold. In an industry where most folks bow to the machine, Clipse doubled down on real rap. This ain't just a verse, it's a warning shot. And the fact it almost didn't see the light of day, that's proof the powers that be still scared of rappers who speak truth in rhythm. Kendrick ain't just spitting for bars, he's spitting for battle.
I study rap battles for a living.
All right, so Kendrick ain't just drop a dope verse. He drew a line in the sand, and Clipse, they stood on the right side of it. But what really made this verse a moment in hip-hop history is how it shook the entire structure from the top down. This wasn't just some underground feature tucked away on a deep cut. Nah, this was front and center, lead single energy. And the moment execs heard Kendrick talk that spiritual smoke and drop subliminals aimed at the industry cowards, they panicked. See, Drake's lawsuit against UMG been floating in the background too. Word is he mad because his recent projects got censored, like they got watered down before release. He allegedly blaming the label for protecting certain relationships, cutting shots at Kendrick and Cole, and blocking diss tracks from playlist placement. Now flip that and look at Kendrick. He not signed to nobody, he free, and still got his verse almost shelved. You already know what that looks like. That's control. That's censorship. That's fear. UMG allegedly told Clipse, "We can't afford another Kendrick-Drake war right now, too risky." That's wild. When a verse is so dangerous it might spark another beef, not on the streets, but in courtrooms and boardrooms. You know it ain't just about bars. It's about money, optics, and who gets to control the story. And Kendrick been wrestling that narrative back from day one. Now what's crazy is that Kendrick didn't even say Drake's name. He ain't say Ovo or Champagne Poppy, but he didn't have to. His words carried that weight. And the deeper you read into it, the more you realize he talking legacy, betrayal, and silence. The silence of artists who know the game is rigged, but still play it. The betrayal of folks who used to ride with you, but switch homage for a check. That's why fans started speculating Kendrick might have been aiming at more than just Drake. There's one bar that had everybody scratching their heads. I seen crowns rust from handshakes with rats. Oof. That line had folks digging up old footage, old interviews, all trying to figure out who been shaking hands in the dark. J. Cole? Maybe. Kanye? Could be. Snoop Dogg? He was on stage with Drake a few months back, right after the diss war. Kendrick don't move it by accident. Every bar is a chess move. In this verse, he just checked half the board. But the real brilliance here is how Kendrick flipped biblical stories into diss lines. I'm not Judas, I'm the flame over Sodom. That line right there, he basically saying he's not the betrayer, he's the punishment. He ain't just calling out snakes, he burning the garden down. It ain't just rap, it's prophecy. Kendrick turned his verse into the sermon, and the altar was the booth. And we gotta talk about how Pusha T held it down. He didn't flinch. You know how many rappers would have bent to Def Jam's demands just to drop on schedule? Not Pusha. He said, if Kendrick's pen ain't on this track, we ain't releasing it. That's rare loyalty in an era where features get cut for politics. But Pusha always been about bars over business. He stood tall when they tried to censor Infrared. He stood tall on the Pop Smoke record they tried to water down. And he stood tall now. And Malice? He backed it too. Even though he'd been out the spotlight on his own spiritual journey, he saw this for what it was, a message that needed to be heard. This wasn't just a Clipse reunion, it was a resurrection. And Kendrick's verse, that was the fire starter. So they walked away from Def Jam, a label they helped build just to make sure this moment stayed intact. That's not just music, that's legacy work. The verse started getting called a $1 million feature, not just because of the clearance costs, but because of the risk and resistance it took to keep it alive. Clipse had to shift their entire rollout, leave the safety of a major label, and bet on themselves with Roc Nation, just to let Kendrick talk his talk. And when Jay-Z said, bet, let's do it, that sealed the deal. Because Hov don't co-sign unless he see vision. And this was vision wrapped in venom. What Kendrick did here is bigger than rap beef. It's about truth versus branding. Real bars versus fake peace. It's about artists who still believe hip-hop is about saying something that matters, even if the world ain't ready to hear it. And this verse reminded everybody, Kendrick's pen don't come to play.
It's time that we change the narratives. You know, some people tell us this generation, they don't have what it takes. Gen Z, we talk about it all day. They try to pull us down and say we don't know what we're doing. They wrong, though. You know why? Because not only y'all have what it takes, but y'all have something even bigger. Y'all have the heart. Y'all have the courage to be independent thinkers. Independent thinkers. It's nothing more valuable than that. Y'all can go out here and tell and express your thoughts and say it with conviction and passion and stand on it and be unapologetic about it.
Now let's talk about how this Kendrick verse didn't just shake Clipse's rollout. It rattled the whole foundation of how major labels handle real lyricism. You gotta understand, what Kendrick dropped on Chains and Whips wasn't just lyrical, it was political. It came with intent, it came with warnings, and it came at a time when hip-hop been drowning in safe bars, recycled flows, and rappers playing nice for the brand deals. Kendrick said nah, he put the art first. Word on the street is Def Jam tried to spin it like the label didn't want to escalate tensions between Kendrick and Drake. But fans saw through that quick. It ain't about beef, it's about control. Kendrick's verse reminded people what hip-hop used to be: dangerous, raw, unapologetic. And that's a problem for execs who now treat rappers like influencers instead of artists. They don't want fire, they want algorithm-friendly content. Kendrick gave them scripture and gunsmoke, and they ain't know what to do with it. Let's break down the part that probably had boardrooms sweating. I ain't friends with shepherds who sell sheep to wolves. That bar is nuclear. Kendrick talking directly to the gatekeepers. He basically saying the folks who claim to guide the culture are the same ones feeding young artists to labels, streaming farms, and vultures. And he's not wrong. Every year, a new rapper pops off and disappears, caught in shady contracts, used for hype, and tossed out the game. Kendrick not only sees it, he's calling it out in plain sight. That bar had people saying it wasn't even about Drake or Cole. It was about the machine itself, the labels, the execs, the streaming deals. Kendrick ain't beefing with artists anymore. He beefing with the entire structure that made rap a product instead of a message. And that's what made the execs so uncomfortable. Not the subliminals, not the smoke. It's the fact that Kendrick's talking truth, and he don't need their platforms to do it. Now let's talk about how this connects back to Kendrick's mission to revive real rap. Ever since that Like That verse, he been on a mission, not to win a beef, but to clean house. He said hip-hop was dead, then started popping up with surgical precision. One verse here, one performance there. Every move calculated. And this Clipse track, it's like he taken the torch from the old school and dragging it through this watered-down era just to burn it clean again. And Pusha T, he's the perfect partner for that mission. Push always been about truth and grime. He never ran from controversy. He embraces it. And now, with Malice back by his side, they ain't just rapping, they testifying. And Kendrick slid right into that space like a prophet with a pen. When you hear that verse, it don't sound like rap. It sounds like a warning letter to the industry. And we all read it loud and clear. There's a section in the verse where Kendrick spits, "If I speak in parables, it's because the devils print transcripts." That line had scholars and fans on overdrive. He basically saying, I talk in code because they always listening. And that's real. Rappers can't even speak their truth without lawyers, PR teams, and label heads jumping in to clean it up. Kendrick just flipped that. He's speaking directly to the people and letting the system choke on the fallout. The impact? Immediate. Fans started flooding socials saying this verse was Kendrick's best since The Heart Part 5. Others said it was control energy all over again. Every blog posted it. Podcasts broke it down line by line. Even rival artists low-key reacted, some with shade, some with respect. But one thing was clear. The silence from certain camps said everything. Ain't nobody want smoke with a verse that powerful. Not Drake, not Cole, not even Kanye. Even Nas reportedly called the verse necessary. Jay-Z's camp dropped hints that he co-signed the whole thing from day one. That's heavyweight respect. When the legends back a verse this raw, it means it ain't just bars, it's a shift. And the industry felt it. Spotify reportedly debated how to push the song. Radiohead's unsure whether to spin it. Even certain playlist curators claimed they got emails telling them to wait. That's fear. That's censorship disguised as caution. And Kendrick? Silent. No follow-up tweets, no gotcha Instagram captions. Just the verse. He let the work speak. That's how you know he ain't trying to chase attention. He already has it. All he did was remind folks why his voice still echoes louder than whole albums from his peers. Now let's wrap this up with the real aftermath. Because Kendrick's verse didn't just send shockwaves, it sparked a chain reaction. The kind that don't show up on Billboard but gets whispered in boardrooms, meetings, and studio sessions across the industry. Ever since that Chains and Whips track dropped, everybody's been moving different. Labels watching what they clear, rappers second-guessing features, execs triple-checking bars. Kendrick reminded them all, real rap still got the power to scare the suits. What made this verse so dangerous wasn't just the lines, it was the refusal to compromise. Kendrick didn't pull up with a club banger or a cute hook. He came with spiritual warfare, shots at cowards, encoded truths. That made it unplayable for safe radio, but unforgettable for the streets. And when Clipse stood behind it, that move alone told the culture, we not diluting this message for nobody. And that's rare, especially when we live in a world where most verses are run through 5 managers, a label A&R, and a brand advisor. But Kendrick ain't here for that. He built his lane outside the machine, and now he's showing the rest of the game how to stay sharp without selling out. And yo, it's working. After this verse, even some of the mainstream acts started posting throwback bars, going back to pen and pad. Rappers who've been quiet started poking their heads out. Why? Because Kendrick raised the bar and now everybody feeling the pressure, and you can see the ripple effect. The rumors say Clipse got even more heavyweight features on their album. Jay-Z and Nas might be sliding in. If true, that's not just a comeback. That's a coronation, a statement that real hip-hop ain't dead. It's just been underground, waiting for the moment to erupt. And now that the moment's here, Kendrick's verse is the blueprint. Ain't no more hiding behind vibes and melodies. It's time to stand on lyrics again. People even say Kendrick's bars relit the fire in Push and Malice's pen. Word is they went back in the studio after Kendrick sent the verse, not to rewrite, but to elevate. Like, yo, we gotta make sure our energy matches his. That's the effect a real MC has. Not just making you want to rap, but making you want to be better. Push said it himself in a recent clip. We not chasing trends, we bring in that surgical flow. And Kendrick, he the scalpel. Meanwhile, UMG still acting like it's business as usual. But the streets ain't fooled. People watching every rollout now, every album that feels too clean, too political. The idea that major labels blocking real art to protect other artists, it's got fans looking sideways. If Kendrick can almost get censored for speaking truth, then what does that say about the freedom these big stars really got? Folks starting to realize, the bigger the artist, the tighter the leash. Kendrick just broke his off. That's why this whole moment matters. Not just for the bars, but for the message. Kendrick, Clipse, Roc Nation, they all proved that you can still make raw, unfiltered, truth-heavy music in 2025 and win. It might not top the streaming charts on day one, but it moves the needle in a way no playlist ever could. It makes the culture talk, debate, react. It brings hip-hop back to what it was built on: resistance, truth, and power. And now, Kendrick ain't even gotta speak again. That one verse said enough. It showed us that bars still matter. That silence don't equal weakness. That sometimes the most dangerous artist in the game ain't the loudest. It's the one who only speaks when it's time to drop fire. He didn't need a diss track, didn't need a rollout, didn't need to tag nobody. He let the words do what they always do when his pen is involved: cut deep. So yeah, Kendrick Lamar on Chains and Whips wasn't just a verse. It was a warning, a message, and a power move. And the fact Clipse risked their label situation, shifted to Roc Nation, and still dropped it untouched, that just made the message louder. You can't kill real hip-hop. You can try to censor it, delay it, hide it behind algorithms, but it always finds a way through. And this time, Kendrick was the vessel.